Hello everybody, it's Maxwell Politan, and today I'm back with another video about the United States of America. I'm very lucky that I've already seen 45 of the 50 United States. My family and I traveled around for about 3 years and we did see a lot. But today I thought I'd pick out 5 of my favorite sites that I've seen so far in the US. Now I could probably talk about this for hours and hours because there's so many great things and I could barely choose 5 of my favorite places I've been to in the US, but I had to for your guys' sake because you don't want to watch an hour-long video. Let's get started. Number 1, the Grand Canyon in the state of Arizona is absolutely amazing. Not only a tourist magnet to people from all over the US, but also to people from all over the world, just like so many of the things in the US. I remember traveling to the Grand Canyon with my family, and my grandma was there that time too, visiting us, and my mom, dad, sister and I, we decided to hike down the Grand Canyon. Now there's usually options of also taking mules down into the Grand Canyon, but we decided to hike, and obviously it's a day-long hike, and it was summer and the heat was so extreme that we had to take several breaks and really rehydrate. And we arrived, it was nighttime, and we spent 2 nights down in the Grand Canyon, and there were barely any people down there. I remember hiking back up the Grand Canyon. We left at 2 in the morning so the midday heat wouldn't catch us, and it was an experience I'm never ever gonna forget. I'm definitely gonna take my kids back there to do the exact same thing my family did back then. Number 2, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, California. Now, San Francisco is already one of my favorite cities in the whole entire world. I just love the whole aesthetic of it being by the water and then the cable cars and everything. But the Golden Gate Bridge is absolutely, it's just amazing to see. Like, no matter what day you pick to go look at it, you will always have picked the right day, because you'll always see other details, and seeing it in a different light or seeing it in the fog or whatever is absolutely amazing. There are 2 very memorable experiences I have with the Golden Gate Bridge. Number 1 is we used to have, like when we traveled around the US, have a big New York City bus, GMC RDS. We built into an RV, and a school bus. So we were traveling around the US with these 2 big buses, and there's obviously two lanes for cars and then for public transportation. And public transportation obviously doesn't have to pay as much when they want to go across the bridge. So we would take these 2 buses across the bridge, and we would always go into the public transportation lane. They couldn't tell the difference, so we didn't pay as much to go across. Another experience, and this is a lot more memorable, is we spent the 4th of July in San Francisco. So we were thinking about where we could see the fireworks in San Francisco, and you're allowed to access the Golden Gate Bridge by foot as a pedestrian as well. So we were like, okay, let's go on top of the Golden Gate Bridge and watch the firework from there. And we were expecting hundreds and thousands of people to do the exact same thing, but there was literally almost nobody else on that bridge except for us. So it was like us 4 and then maybe 5 or 6 other people watching the fireworks on 4th of July on the Golden Gate Bridge. And up to this day, probably one of the most memorable fireworks I've seen in my life. Number 3, Big Bend National Park in Texas. Now, Big Bend is right on the border to Mexico. Now, I remember visiting Big Bend National Park within the first 2 months of when we came to the US. I was very young back then, 7 years old, and it's absolutely beautiful. I remember being so impressed by it, and the scenery, and it's just an absolute magical place to go hiking, just like a lot of other national parks in the US. One thing I do remember about it though, like one thing that really stuck out to me, I remember up to this day, is that supposedly we met the great grand cousin of Jesse James. At least that's what he told us. And I don't know, maybe he just said that to impress us kids. Now I remember we were very impressed by that we met the great grand cousin of Jesse James. And we believed him. Who knows if it's true, but I love it. Still one of my favorite stories to tell. Number 4, Niagara Falls, between the state of New York and Canada. And it's also just very fascinating when you go there. There's so many things you can do. Also around Niagara Falls, so in the Niagara Falls National Park, so many like museums you can visit, and then also the stories of people surviving going down the falls, either purposely in a barrel or something like that, or accidentally, and it's just super fascinating. Also, when you go onto the Canadian side, that's like the only time I've been to Canada so far. I remember that when we traveled across the border, we had a hunting rifle in our RV because we were planning on going hunting along the way. And Canada has very strict gun laws, actually. So when you cross the border, it's your choice. You either turn in the gun to get it back when you come back to the US, or you don't tell them. But if you don't tell them, you can get into a lot of trouble. So we decided to turn in the gun, and I remember handing the officers, the border patrol officers, this hunting rifle, and I was like, this is so bizarre. I was like 12 years old or something like that, just imagining that. Absolutely insane. But Niagara Falls, definitely a place I'm going to come back to. Also, like doing the ferry ride called Maid of the Mist and getting splashed by the falls, and absolutely magical. Number 5, and I saved this for last because I have a very special connection to it, the St. Louis Arch. Now, my family and I used to live in Missouri, near St. Louis, or at least that's what I tell people all the time when they ask me where I lived in Missouri. It's actually about 3.5-4 hours away from where I lived, but I always assume that people don't really know any other cities in Missouri near where I lived, so. But the St. Louis Arch, it just gives me the goosebumps every time I see it. Also called Gateway to the West. Now, St. Louis borders Illinois, and there's actually another small city in Illinois called East St. Louis, but they're not connected. And yeah, so the St. Louis Arch is also called Gateway to the West. It is the tallest arch, the highest arch in the world, and actually the tallest accessible building in Missouri. There's a museum in the bottom, and I think it's also a national park, the Gateway Arch National Park. So yeah, you can find out a lot of things about Lewis and Clark and the Lewis and Clark Trail, and why it's called Gateway to the West and everything. It's super interesting, and then you can go up in it with elevators, super small elevators. The view from above is absolutely amazing. And then you go down on the other side. It's a lot bigger than you'd think when you look at it, but yeah, I have a very special connection to the Gateway Arch and to St. Louis. I just love that city so much. Also home of the Anheuser-Busch Brewing Company. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down below what your favorite sight to see is in the US, and I will be back with more videos on the United States. Ciao, tschüss, bis then. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Ba 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 ba. Ciao, ciao.